got there gradually, I must say. Um, Essentially, it wasn't the plan from the beginning. So, as a young Christian in church, a couple guys took me under their wing and started to really mentor me and coach me, disciple me. And I didn't know it at the time. I didn't know this is what was happening.
But I was fascinated with his church and how diverse church was, like people from different countries. So I guess maybe a question: how that happened? How did that? Because I've noticed like sometimes churches are just being one culture kind of thing in Ireland that I visited.
Oz, I think we should ask the D-men, Dr. Debeljuh, to explain what's the difference between the term Christian in the Bible and the term disciple. How's that work, Joe?
Hello, folks. Dennis Allen with the Disciple Dilemma. Today is a very international podcast. As you know, we've had a lot of people from around the world talking with us about being a disciple of Christ from all over the world. Well, today we're going to really mix that one up. We have Dr. Joe Debeljuh from Zagreb, Croatia, hosting the episode. I'll be there. And also, we're going to have from Africa, serving as a pastor in Ireland with an MBA, Oz Muwaniri. Let's talk about discipleship internationally. What does it mean in Ireland? What does it mean in Croatia? What does it mean in the U.S.? This is going to be interesting. Here we go.
Oz Muwaniri, thank you for joining us on the Disciple Dilemma.
Thank you so much, Dennis and Joe, for having me.
And Dr. Joe Debeljuh, thank you for being aboard to help me make this thing run today.
Hey, looking forward to it. Glad to be a part of it, Dennis. And
you know, folks, normally when we do this sort of thing, Joe and I would be asking our guest, in this case Oz, a lot of questions, but I find a fascinating conversation before we started the podcast with Oz. He wants to throw some hardball questions at us and start unpacking things a little bit so he can point out the fact that those of us in the U.S. don't have this figured out very well either, but we're all willing to try and learn. So, Oz, I think you said you wanted to ask Joe, right?
Yes, I will jump in there and just go, what is a disciple? Because over here in Ireland, I'm on the west side of Ireland, it is a term we do not use that often at all. At times when we quote the Great Commission, we would say it, but we don't explain it. So I think it would be good, Joe, if you...
Sure, I'll try my best. The way I understand it, a disciple is, in a narrow sense, a disciple is someone who has surrendered his life to Christ and is following Christ. He's trying to become like Christ and is leading others as well, whether proclaiming the gospel or just walking along a brother or sister that is already a believer. But in a broader sense, disciple is a follower. So that's and it's an everyday thing that we follow Christ. It's not a Sunday where you show up in a church and you check off the box.
Oz, I think we should ask the D-men, Dr. Debeljuh, to explain what's the difference between the term Christian in the Bible and the term disciple.
Well, I mean, there might be differences here. To me, that's the same thing, because you cannot be a Christian unless you're a disciple. So, they call them Lord Christ in the beginning, or in the New Testament, or follower or the way. So, in all four gospel disciples, but it's a term that has been used interchangeably. So, my belief is that a Christian.
I guess I've got a follow-up question, which is, at what point did it sort of like migrate to a Christian or disciple being attendance on Sunday? Because it sure seems like if you tick that box on Sunday.
In America, we said, well, being a Christian is about going on Sunday, sitting in a pew, becoming a member of this institution, this organization, this gathering of people. And I do this in a way where I might learn a few things about the church. I might have a Bible. I might come to say that Jesus is my Savior. He saved me. He got me out of hell. Wow, that's a lot to take in. Okay, now as a Christian, what I do is I sit in the pew and you, Oz, preach, and you, Joe, preach, and I sit there with my coffee. I might take the children and drop them off at a children's program, but I sit there and you give me good talks. So membership replaced discipleship. Membership being truth replaced in America what it means to really be a pursuer of the Most High God with all my heart, mind, soul, and strength, surrendered lordship. That's the world that we're in. And not to talk too long on it, but let me throw two statistics out that you might have some fun talking with your folks about. In the United States, 93% of the people who are sitting in the pews say, it's not my job to talk about Jesus. I am not equipped. I am not willing. That's 93% of the people in the pews. One more statistic, and then I'll shut up. 82% of the people sitting in the pews have no Bible study, no fellowship, no prayer life, and they come to church, they come to Galloway Christian Fellowship 1.6 times a month. That's their definition of being a good Christian. So we're inert in America, we're afraid, we're unequipped, we don't want to talk about it. It's up to you and Joe, Oz, to share the good hope. There's going to be a lot of people who go, hey, it used to be that you Christians couldn't get along with each other over there. The Catholics hated the Protestants hated the Catholics. Is all happy now? Or how does Christian?
Oh, that's an interesting one. That's that's a touchy one. Especially the one thing we have definitely tried to unite on is you need Christ. And there's been a lot of emphasis on how you can be saved, right? And especially then in the West, because there's not many churches. The churches that are there are quite united on that you need Christ. And then the other stuff is like it's a bit tricky because I don't know how familiar you guys are maybe with just some abuses that have happened that are associated with church, and that makes it really tricky. So when people come to your church, that's one.
Well, I was just fascinated with I visited Oz's church because I was connected to him through my friend, a basketball contact and member of his church, Stephen and Kershid and their family. And we did some basketball. But I was fascinated with his church and how diverse church was, like people from different countries.
Yeah, we definitely used to be one culture, which is kind of white Irish, but just as a function of immigration and migrating and people moving all over the place, many people are coming from places outside the West, as in Western world, and coming into Ireland. But what that done is they've actually brought these ideas of discipleship. They've sort of like almost energized the churches again. So our church is no different. So a lot of churches will be like that, will be, multi-ethnic, so you've got everybody in the church mixing together. So it's a wonderful thing. It's got its own challenges, but it is a wonderful thing. And that's what you saw, Joe, when you came. Like we've got all nations.
And I guess I'd like the follow-up question, because I have experience with, with multi-ethnic, international, even from college, my team roommates being from India, Indonesia, and we have international church here, and internationals are coming. And it's a neat thing, but I know that internationals kind of need more time, because most of them don't have grandparents here, parents, maybe even siblings. So how are you able to address that need, that possible need of them needing more time?
Yes, so definitely one thing we have consciously done as a church is we've tried to create a welcoming environment. So a lot of people would sort of like belong before you believe type thing, where you could come and you explore. And you're right, people need more time, especially sometimes maybe when they're coming from countries that are sort of like Christian countries, where they might not, they're not against Christianity, but they're certainly not Christians or disciples, but they're happy to come to your church. And so we welcome them, but then as they sit in the pews for 2, 3, 4 years, they're then hearing the gospel. And then it's only after some time, then people are like, oh, I believe in Jesus. I want to get baptized. So it's
Oz, I'm curious about how someone in your church, let's pick one of, you have some leadership in your church, I assume, besides just you. You're not the only leader in the church, right?
Yes, we have an eldership.
Okay, so if we cornered a couple of your elders, we put them in a room and we shine the bright light on them, lock the doors, and we say, okay, I want you to explain the difference between evangelism and discipleship.
To me, do I understand evangelism is a part of discipleship, because as Jesus, calls us to go make disciples, the text presumes that the nations do not have disciples, right? Followers of Christ. So the text presumed there, and in Mark 16:15, it says, go and proclaim the gospel to the whole creation. So the first part of discipleship is evangelism. So, but it's not only evangelism, because there are people who are already saved, believers who need somebody who walk alongside them, lead them to Christ more. But we need to practice both. So we need to proclaim the gospel, build relationship in the community. So that's that evangelism part, pre-evangelism part, and then also walking alongside believers and encourage them to make disciples themselves.
I find in America that the greatest fear among the Christians that I speak with in churches is, you guys want me to be an evangelist. You want me to get a bullhorn and get down into the town square and start shouting at people as they walk by, throw Bibles at them and scream that they're all going to burn in hell if they don't come to Jesus. You're trying to make me into that. That's what you mean by being a disciple. Okay, Joe, you get that objection thrown at you.
No, absolutely not. Like there are examples of street preaching, but most people come to faith through relationships. So just your relationship and that you have in your community, at your work, is your evangelism opportunity. As you live your life and build a relationship, you are also trying to proclaim the gospel. That just to live the gospel, proclaim the gospel. So nobody's going to go out there and throw books at people or put signs. This is not going to get anybody to follow Christ. We want to show the world that we're normal people who are following Christ, who has given.
On the one hand, people read passages like Matthew 28:19, where Jesus said, go make disciples. And they tend to interpret that as go get the world saved, go out, travel all over the world. Each individual Christian, some people will say, you're supposed to travel all over the world and get people saved. Would you give me a contrast between the idea of going out and getting people saved as an evangelist? In other words, think about what you think of as an evangelist, like a Billy Graham, perhaps, right? Or somebody like a J. John in the European world, UK. Contrast that evangelism idea with the passage in 1 Peter 3:15, where we have this beautiful statement that says, in your heart, set apart Christ as Lord, and always be prepared to give to anyone who asks you the reason for the hope that's in you. How do you contrast the bullhorn evangelist with that passage? What does that passage say to you?
I'm not sure what Joe was going to say, but one thing we always try and say to our people is this idea of you don't have to be able to answer all the questions, especially the first Peter one. People think of apologetics, right? But I always try and teach our people of you need to know the reason for what it is that you believe in, right? Jesus went to the cross, rose again. No one can take that away from you. You can say your testimony of how it happened to you, and then how your life has been transformed ever since. So that's kind of where the First Peter passage kind of comes in, and as you do that First Peter, sort of like basically letting people know about Christ, you're actually fulfilling the Matthew passage as well. So they don't really have to contradict with each other. You could be going your workplace, in your family, with your friends. You could just be gently telling them what it is that you believe in. And most people, actually, we find in our church, most people who have come either through an invitation of a friend, a relative, it's somebody that they already know. And when they've sort of like experienced the church, then they invite friends. They're like, come along, come see what is happening. And then through that, it continues to go and go. And as you do that.
Yeah, I mean, what Oz says exactly, through relationships. I mean, that's First Peter, right? Those are the persecuted Christians that Peter is writing to. So they have colleagues that are, persecute them. The Roman militaries persecute them. So they just leave among people, and he's telling them, be ready to share your hope, right? And then later, I think it says with gentleness, right? So it's not presumed to yell at people or like standing on stadiums and proclaim the gospel. And as I earlier said, that's how most of the people come to Christ anywhere, not just in Ireland or Croatia. It's through relationships and sharing. And as the time comes, you share that hope. But I would just push back, more maybe not push back, but if we only think about for those people who think, okay, I only need to share when they ask me, they might never ask you. That's why we have a lot of imperatives in the Bible. Go and make disciples. Proclaim the gospel, right? Paul tells Timothy in 1 Timothy chapter 4, preach the gospel in the season, out of season, right? So there is a proactive part in us that we are called to do. So there is a balance, because some guys might never ask you, especially in culture like Croatia, they might not ask you like, what's your hope? But they might ask you like yesterday, I was driving and sharing the car with we call that Blaba car here, and they asked, why did you come to Croatia? And that was a wide open to say, hey, I came here to share the hope because I never heard the gospel in 22 years growing up in Croatia. But that was like talking to somebody that I know, I just met him like 5 minutes before, and they're riding in my car. But it is mainly through relationship that we need to proclaim the gospel. And in that text, we see in Acts 1:8, right? It says, when the Holy Spirit come upon you, you'll be my witnesses. Where? In Jerusalem. In other words, where you live. First, where you live. And then in Judea and Samaria later on, right? So first, we need to be witnesses here.
No, I was going to say, the Roman passage comes to mind, Romans 10, right? How can they call, right? If they don't believe, and how can they believe if they don't hear, right? And how can they hear if nobody preaches to them, right? And then how can, somebody preach if no one's sent? So then that idea of, you've got to open your mouth at some point. And usually the way God works, in an unforced way, he always presents opportunities. Like that, like as you're saying, like you're just in a car and a question is just asked. And when that opportunity is presented, you need to take opportunity of it.
What does it look like to really have another disciple walking alongside a disciple if we think about the New Testament examples? When Oz used the phrase life,
I mean, it depends on philosophy, as far as is it a life commitment relationship, or it's like some people think you should spend 6 months, once a month with somebody, or maybe once a week. To me, it's just, it's a commitment, depending on your context, right, or your circumstances, family circumstances, and things like that. but if possible, is spending a quality time on some regular basis. Like you, Dennis, you can answer really that question with your wing concept, walking alongside, being a wingman to somebody as your military background as a pilot. So it's spending time with somebody, pursuing that person, even pouring the word, praying with them, and just being a friend. And friend committed to no matter what. That's how I see discipleship. Whether they stay in my church or they move somewhere else, I'm still staying in touch with that person. But like I said, depending on the context, pastor have so much going on that there's a different context on that. But it is more than just doing a once a month occasionally. How are you doing? If you want to do a little bit a more quality disciple making, support deeper in a person, and for them to really grow and want to do the same thing, because they need to have a model of what you've done. And if it's only like once a year thing, they might model the same thing. And in the Bible, we see a lot more of that with Paul, with Timothy and Titus, and
Oz, how do you think in Ireland people would respond to the idea that every disciple is to be making other disciples, developing other disciples as they're developing themselves? How would that concept resonate with most of the folks?
I think it'll be scary. Most people don't feel qualified. There's an imposter syndrome. Most people feel that they don't know enough of the Bible to be able to disciple somebody. It's almost that same thing, right? Where you want somebody to teach a parenting course at your church, but all the people who've had grown-up kids who are following Christ, they don't want to do it because they feel that they have not done a good job. So it's kind of one of those, that's the response most people have.
Here's two more statistics. 80% of the pastors in America have never been discipled. 80% of the pastors have never been discipled. 96% of the people in the pews have never been discipled. They've never had anybody say, come with me on a journey. Let's together explore the profound beauty of the Most High God and the destiny that He's laid out for us, the calling He's laid out for us. That's 80% of pastors, 96% of people in the pews. That's a stunning number to me, which means a lot of people in the U.S.
I want to just make a comment, because Dennis, you talk about a lot. Discipleship isn't only pouring information, that you need to have some kind of degree. I mean, you need to be a friend with somebody, and somebody needs to be a friend with you. It's a great start. Actually, we wrestled here with that. Mark and I yesterday, Dennis and mine, a common friend, brother in Christ. We have that kind of wingman discipleship relationships. We wrestle with that. In Croatia, generally speaking, we hang out a lot for coffee and we encourage one another. And anybody can do that. So anybody who is listening out there, you can be a brother in Christ and encouraging one another. But what we also concluded, Marco and I, with commenting on Dennis' friend that he did yesterday, last few days, a conference, John Tolston, he's more challenging in pouring into people. So we made a comment that we need to balance this thing, because in Croatia, generally speaking, we just want to hang out, which is a great thing. But even better is to have a balance to where we actually do share some, biblical truth and have some kind of task at times. I don't want to scare people. To make disciples, you can also be a friend. You don't need to know a whole lot. All you need to share is what you know.
Who's the onus on to get this sort of disciple making process? I don't know, for lack of a better word, going. Is it the person who needs to be discipled to go out and try and find people, or is it the mature Christians?
I have the answer for sure. I've concluded in my 30 years, it's a mature believer that has to pursue people. It's us. Yeah, that's what Jesus pursued. He came to seek and save the lost. It's because, like you said, most people we're not recorded, right? Even if we are, this needs to go to everybody. Like you said, most people are timid, right? They don't have so they are timid to meet with us or Yossi. Like, although I have all these degrees, I'm not into this kind of stuff. Like, I'm as practical as they come. Just Dennis keep calling me doctor. I don't know why, but so it's now I lost my train of thought. Yeah, it came to me. So they might be timid. Like, if I get together with Oz, he will realize I don't know much about the Bible. So I'm not going to pursue that, you know? So our common friend, said something to this young guy who was in a church. This is a small church. 10 people were there yesterday. And Marco told him something that this guy is struggling. It's a serious issue. And he said, hey, call me anytime. Can I call you sometime? Like, he calls him, but call me anytime. If you're in that crisis moment, call me. Feel free. I'm a sinner like you are. And he even said it publicly to everybody. So that opened up like, wow, you know, he's like, I can actually talk to you even though you're a sinner. So long answer, but we as a believer, older believers, we need to pursue it. But Dennis, why don't you mention comment about that great essay that you shared with me a year ago about that church in California where they actually, why is this important to us? Because you're the pastor and you can organize this where people might don't want to meet, but they trust the church. Dennis, you remember the essay? They trust the church, and then you can kind of put them together on a 6-week commitment where a mature believer meets maybe a less mature, and then you kind of let them continue or reset the whole thing every 6 months. That was one of the best essays that we could move from nothing to something, you know, because there is nothing going on in churches on that level, and people can trust the church. They might not trust Joe as a missionary in local church because I'm a new in a particular church that I go to. But they will trust you because you're a pastor and you're putting together, okay, this guy could match this guy, and then they trust your wisdom in putting people together. I don't know if Dennis, you want to share.
That essay was called The D Combinator, and it was by Dr. Curtis Chang out of Duke University, who's now out on the West Coast with Redeeming Babel. And so the idea there is that there is, it's almost like a dating service. The local church acts like a local dating service. And what we're thinking about is, you know, in a dating service, in America, we have one called eHarmony. It was actually the program was written by a Christian. You get online and you put in all the stuff that's you describe your life, who you are, what you think and what you're excited about. And then the database goes, well, you know, given that Joe's a basketball nut and that he really does this and he does that, this girl, Kelly, she'd be a great match for Joe. And so that's the right kind of person to come together. So in this idea of discipleship, the D Combinator idea, the essay that Joe was talking about, is that the church should function like a dating service, except as disciples, pairing disciples up, you know. So for example, Dennis, he's really weak and deficient, and he's kind of all messed up theologically, and he just doesn't get it. So Oz goes, you know, Dennis, I want you to pair up with Joe. Joe, I want you to pair up with Dennis, because Joe's really strong, Joe's really powerful, and he would be a lot of help, and that'd be a good fit. So we need to put Joe with Dennis and Dennis with Joe. On the other hand, you may say, you know, Oz and Joe are out in this really tough part of a country where a lot of people don't know Christ and people are very cynical and they're very uninterested. But Oz is a strong Christian. Joe's a strong Christian. We need to pair those guys up as peers, as wingmen, kind of co-equals who are running together in this process. And so this idea of a dating service is an interesting function for churches, rarely ever pursued. Most of the time what we do is we say, I want you to become a member of my church. I want you to attend the programs that we have. I want you to come to a small group. I want you to be a part of our Bible studies. And that's all you have to do. There's never any pairing of two together to go through life together. Some as a student for maybe a year. Maybe I'm a student of Joe's for a year or two. And then Joe kicks me out and says, your job now is to go align with, there's this other guy over there. Go over and meet with Bill, right? We want you to connect with Bill. Bill, we want you to meet Joe, Bill, and connect them together. And so we begin to make more disciples. We're beginning to split off and go. Excuse me. I think the church has abrogated that duty. I think we've largely walked away from that and said, our job is to have really good talks, really good music, really good fellowship. That's what the Decombinator essay, Joe, that you were bringing up was really intended to address, how we do that. So I would say one other thing to Oz's question, which I think was a great question, and it's a very pastoral question. We need to teach young believers also, your job is to have mentors in your life. And if you don't have a mentor in your life, you need to go grab Oz, your pastor, by the lapels and shake him and say, I need somebody. I want somebody ahead of me. And I want a wingman also. So I want somebody coaching my life, and I want a wingman with me. And I guess my concluding remark is that on this, a lot of people say, well, what does that mean exactly, to have a wingman or to have a mentor? One thing I know about Joe as my wingman, by the way, that comes from an illustration from American military flying. We talk about a wingman as somebody who flies with you. You know, if you've seen the movie Top Gun, you know kind of how that works. These guys fly together. If you have one airplane, one combat airplane flying in a bad environment, the studies show that that airplane probably won't survive the combat mission, because that guy going alone is going to get ambushed and he's going to crash. But if you put a wingman together, and I know this from professional experience because I've taught combat aviation in the airplanes, if you give me a wingman, my two airplanes can go into a battle where I'm outnumbered 10-1. And just because I've got Joe close to me, he knows how I think, he knows how I act. He's going to see the bad guys trying to creep up on me. He's going to see me doing stupid stuff and can call me out on it. The wingman idea is so important in discipleship. That's what Jesus did. He'd walk up to these guys and he knew what they were thinking. He knew how they acted. He knew where they were going. You know, it's like, hey, Jesus, can we call down fire on this village and blow it up because they're not doing things the way we want them to? And he's like, you bunch of dorks. That's not what I was telling you. That's not what I meant. Joe can actually look at me in life. This is a true story. I'm not making this up. Joe can look at me and he knows when things are going well or not going well in my life. He knows me that well. And I can look at Joe and I know Joe. I know what's going on in Joe's life. I can read Joe's mind. I'm that close to him because he's let me into his life. That's discipleship. Oz, you've got to tell us your story. I'm talking to a guy who's got an MBA. You should be on Wall Street or in the financial districts of London, trading, arbitraging, hedge funds, stocks, and portfolios, and you're in a pulpit.
I got there gradually, I must say. Essentially, as a young Christian in church, a couple guys took me under their wing and started to really mentor me and coach me and disciple me. And I didn't know, but we would just do, things together. Like they would teach me how to, do a Bible study. They would teach me things like, they would invite me to their house. They would come to my house and they would call me up on stuff because I grew up in church, but I didn't really know my Bible. So I remember even there was a time where I was like believing, prosperity theology, God wants you healthy, wealthy, and to prosper. And I just had snippets of these verses, right? God doesn't want to make you the tail, he wants to make you the head. And these guys would just listen to me. And then they'll just say something as simple as, oh, have you read the verse before that? If you read the verse after that? Just little things like that. And because we were doing life together, we're doing everything together, they were really, actually one of them was a missionary, out of America who had, again, given up job, money, and all that stuff and come just to help out the church. And just by watching his life, I say to myself, I want to be like this guy. And so my plan was make as much money as I can. So the whole Wall Street thing, that was the plan, make as much money as I can and then at 50, retire, and then be like that guy and just, help out at the church, just help out the pastor, be one of those, couples that help out. But this is now when like the elders and my pastor, they came alongside me and they say, hey, we're seeing how you're growing. Why don't you actually consider going to seminary? And which is not something that I ever considered. And then I started saying, I can't do this, I can't do this, I can't do this. Then they took me through like the last 7-8 years, the things that I've already been doing, because they had been, discipling me and teaching me all these little things, teaching me how to read the Bible, teaching how to lead Sunday service, teaching me how to preach. So by the time they actually said, oh, I think you should consider seminary and forget that whole, it retire at 50, that's when it dawned on me. I was like, okay. So
I was intrigued by your desire to learn more about discipleship. Sometimes you comment to people, I'm sort of into discipleship, and there's no comment. But then you like took it to another level. You wanted all these resources. It was kind of very refreshing. Like, oh, there's another person. So I told Dennis, man, there's a pastor that wants to know about discipleship a whole lot more. And I got him your book and things like that. So that was.
And I think it was wonderful even hearing that term, so like missional discipleship, because people tend to think that the two compete against each other, right? If you evangelize, then discipleship goes by the wayside. Or if you're discipling, then that church doesn't really, evangelize. But I was just intrigued by how, both, you can have both come together. And, so from reading all that stuff you're sending me, I was like, yeah, this.
Pastor Oz Muwaniri, thank you for being with us on the Disciple Dilemma.
Thank you for having me, guys.
Enjoyed it. Thank you, guys.
Would you help the church think more about discipleship? Would you help us get the conversation started to talk about the biblical discipleship Jesus gave us? Please follow us. Our website, www.thediscipledilemma.com. You can find us on YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and all the RSS feeds. If you'd follow or like us, you'll help us get leverage in the digital marketplace to talk about the fact that discipleship needs to be talked about. And as always, folks, thanks for listening.